Hi guys, how y'all doing today? Ready to talk some fishing, and hopefully I can help you learn a few more tips, tricks, and techniques to catch more fish while you're near shore and offshore fishing. My name is Captain Dylan Hubbard from Hubbard's Marina. Hubbard's Marina is our family-owned and operated business. We've been fishing local waters here in Central West Florida since 1928. Over 90 years and 4 generations, we've been fishing near shore and offshore for grouper, snapper, amberjack, pelagics, and more. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about that, hopefully answering some of you guys' questions. Throughout this seminar, I kind of like to make it more of a fishing conversation. I don't like to sit up here and just talk at you. Hopefully we can talk with you and answer some of the questions you guys might have. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody's got a raffle ticket. Does everybody have a raffle ticket? Very cool. At the end of this seminar, what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to pick one lucky winner for a 10-hour all-day for 2 guests, and another lucky winner for a 5-hour half-day for 2 guests. And we do these seminars once a month here at Bass Pro Shops, except for June during red snapper season. We do these once a month, so you can always come back and visit us again if you don't win today. And we have our live fishing shows every Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. Hopefully you'll enjoy this today. And on Sunday nights at 8:30 p.m. we kind of show you photos and videos of what's been going on the past week at Hubbard's Marina. And we answer more of your fishing tips, tricks, and other questions. So it's a great opportunity, guys. If you don't feel like raising your hand today during the seminar, you can always just type your questions to us tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. every Sunday on our Hubbard's Marina Facebook and YouTube pages. So today we're going to start off by talking about what's going on right now, what's coming up at Hubbard's Marina and near shore and offshore. As far as what's been going on, we have cooler water temperatures. These cold fronts have started now, and as this water cools down, the gag groupers start to move inshore. And we've been seeing that more and more, these gag groupers starting to move inshore. What happens? Exactly, I'm excited about it too. Any month ending in ER is best for gag groupers. So September, October, November, December, great time for gag groupers. However, September is a little early, it's still kind of hot, but most of the time, October, it starts cooling down. This year, not so much. We really had to wait till November. Can you guys hear me back there? Right. We really had to wait till November for the water to start cooling down. But now we are there. And right now the water temperature is like 75 degrees and it's only getting better. So as this water temperature continues to cool, the gags move in. The opposite happens in the summertime. In the summertime, the gags go further out. They're in deeper water. So typically, the middle of June, we're fishing 150, 180, even 200 foot for the gag grouper and red snapper. This time of year, you can catch gag groupers in 10 foot of water, even 20 foot of water. So it's a great time of year for gag grouper. And offshore, they don't leave offshore. In 120, 130, 140 foot of water, we're catching huge amounts of big, aggressive gags. They also get more aggressive this time of year too. So it's a great time to get out there and go after those gag grouper. Our 39-hour fishing trip typically is averaging anywhere from about 25 to 40 keeper gag groupers. And that's without live bait because of the red tide. So needless to say, the gag grouper bite's getting better and better. Our 5-hour half day on the hub this past weekend, or this past week, got 6 keeper gags and a bunch of hogfish. So the hogfish bite is picking up too. As the water cools, the hogfish get more aggressive. This is their spawning time of year, so the hogfish bite is continuing to get better. Best area for hogfish is anywhere from about 30 to about 70 foot of water. Those hogfish love crustaceans, whether it's live shrimp, fiddler crabs, or a myriad of different crustaceans, from sand fleas to any other hard exoskeleton crustaceans. So we like to use shrimp the most just because it gets a lot of other action, but the fiddler crabs kind of help you dial in on those hogfish. But hogfish live in harems. Pretty interesting life, right? So what that means is you'll have 1 male hogfish, you'll have like 6 or 7 female hogfish. So if you catch a female hogfish, you know there's a big male there and there's 5 or 6 other females. And if you catch a male hogfish, you know there's a bunch of other female hogfish. If you catch a small male hogfish, there's typically another big male and multiple females. So hogfish live in areas in large concentrations. And they typically prefer some very hard rock bottom with the sea fans, and they'll go out over the sandier or shellish bottom and go scavenge for crustaceans, shrimp and other crabs and stuff like that. They love small ledges. You catch a lot of hogfish on small ledges. And hogfish will be on big ledges too. The problem is hogfish are very unaggressive, super leader shy, very smart fish. They're one of the last fish to feed. The reason why is, again, they're very smart and leader shy, and they're very unaggressive. So a lot of times when you're fishing for a hogfish, they're one of the last fish that you catch on the spot. That's why smaller ledges work so much better, because on a big 6-foot ledge, you're going to have a lot of other fish that you have to get through to get to those hogfish. Whereas on a small ledge, it's going to be a lot easier to get through those other more aggressive fish. So that's the big thing this time of year, hogfish and grouper. But we just started our kingfish run. The last couple weeks, we've really started to see the kingfish finally in the nearshore waters. Offshore, the kingfish kind of hang around all year. We have a steady flow of them. But spring and fall is always best for the kings. Unfortunately, this year, our cold fronts were super late in the year, so we're just starting to see the kingfish. Again, that water temperature is between 73 and 75 degrees, which is a great water temperature for those kingfish. So right now, we're seeing those kingfish anywhere from about 5 to 8, upwards of 30 to 40 pounds near shore. And then offshore, we're seeing bigger models as well. So it's a great time to go after those kingfish and mackerel. We're still seeing some tuna. As the water cools, the tuna bites should get better and better. There's a lot of cobia out there right now. In the cooler months, the mangrove snapper are very big and fairly aggressive offshore. The last 39-hour trip had almost 400 mangrove snapper. Almost a boat limit for 38 people. So a ton of mangrove snapper. We had a bunch of big yellowtail snappers, a bunch of big gags, some nice red grouper. So all in all, right now, the offshore bite is going very well, along with big kingfish and a few tuna too. And then nearshore, hogfish, gags, and the mangrove snapper are picking up nearshore too. So needless to say, the bite is going very well. The problem we have, the one problem we have right now, or two problems we have right now, are cold fronts and red tide. Cold fronts are very, very tricky. You've got to time your trip around the front. As a cold front comes into the area, the barometer starts slowly dropping, and that fish and bite gets way, way, way good right up until the front. Then when the front comes through, the barometer drops like a rock, the water temperature drops, the water gets stirred up with the high wind and high waves, and the bite goes to nothing. And then once the front goes through, today's a perfect example. Today's gorgeous out there. It's mid-70s, it's not flowing, the water's calm. It's a great day to go fishing, right? Nearshore bite sucks. And the reason why is the wind and waves have calmed down, but the water hasn't had time to clear up. When it's cold outside, you and I can put on jeans and boots and jackets. The fish, they can't do that. So this time, behind a front like this, the water's still murky and muddy. The water's still pretty cool. Those fish are hugged up against the rock with sand in their gills. They're not happy. They're not ready to chew. So it's a very tough time nearshore. Offshore, the fish bite rebounds behind the front exponentially more quickly because the water doesn't get stirred up or as murky. So our 39-hour trip, they went out there Friday afternoon on the backside of that front, started fishing late Friday night and early Saturday morning. Hopefully they're doing really well. They didn't call me on the satellite phone like they were supposed to, but hopefully they're doing very well. We'll find out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for that live video. But as far as the half-day fishing trips go, we had a half-day go out near shore today, and it started really slow. But That barometer started creeping back up. The sun got in the sky today. It warmed up really fast. It was 48 degrees in my house this morning, but it's already almost 70 degrees. So the water, or the air temperature increased significantly. The sun came out, and the fish really started picking up about 10:30, 11 a.m. The bite went from like hardly anything to slowly picking up. Tomorrow it's going to be a little bit better. Sunday, I think it's probably going to be the best near shore fishing day in the next week or so. And then Monday, it'll be about average. Tuesday, it might pick up a little bit and be closer to Sunday. Then Wednesday, we're going to be getting I haven't looked at the weather closely, but it looks like a really high pressure. We have a high east breeze. So definitely Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is really good opportunities to fish. All I'm getting at here, guys, is this time of year it becomes super important to watch the weather and time your trips around that weather. On our website, hubbardsmarina.com, we have under the fishing trips tab, whether you own your own boat, you fish on another party boat or charter boat, or you're fishing with us, the website is a great tool because under fishing trips, we have the fishing rules and regulations page. A lot of people ask what's in season, how big do they have to be, etc. That's right there on the page anytime you want it. Also, we have the fishing tips and tricks page. That is a bunch of videos. Old seminars that we did here, this filming we're doing goes right on the website. Our Sunday night live shows go right on the website, so it's a great resource for more tips and tricks. But that weather links page is the real golden source for you guys. We have weather models, we have our NOAA forecast, wind finder, all that on our website. All the tools that I use to check the weather are right there on the website for you guys. And you can always cheat. There's a contact button on the top right side of our website. You can always ask me through that contact tab, and I'd be more than happy to help you check the weather too. All right?
Now,
perfect transition.
Yep, weather I always like to go, number one, go to figure out what I'm going to be planning on going for. And I go by the tides and how strong they are. You can give me some feedback on the tides. But the question I really want to ask you is, how much do you like to do? I know it makes more of a difference in the inshore fishing of where the moon phase and so forth on that. Of course, snapper fishing is great with the full moon at night. In the daytime, it sucks, you know. But how do you how much consideration do you always do with mine's the barometric pressure, because that's more important to me, and weather.
So variables, fishing variables.
How much would you have the variable? How much do you consider here when you were thinking, and how successful has it been for you? Because I've had where I put my own fish in my fish tank, and I've been there chewing hard. It's going to be a good day of fishing. When I'm feeding in the morning the first thing, you know, and it seems like the fishing's not that good. So those fish even feel that pressure.
And that's a big, good point. What his question was is how do the variables, tides, moon phase, weather, affect fishing? We talked about weather pretty extensively already, but barometric pressure, tides, and moon phase have a huge part to play in fishing. Every time I do this, I always struggle to find the fish I'm looking for. The best option would be on this big mouth buffalo here. You see this line that goes down the side of the fish right there? Pretty distinct line. And what the snook is what I was looking for. The snook right above here, that black line, easiest fish to see that on. It's called their lateral line. And that lateral line is basically a barometer. And what that does is that senses pressure changes. So underwater, the fish, they don't have that great of vision. They really see mostly movement changes, and that's what they're hunting for. So the barometric pressure and the pressure change from fish moving around them is also how they sense danger, how they sense food, etc. So as far as the barometer goes, whenever the barometer is moving, fishing is good. The best fishing is on a falling barometer, an average falling barometer. If the barometer's tanking like it does when a cold front comes through, not so good, and that means bad weather typically. Now, a rising barometer before a high pressure still means pretty good fishing. But a static barometer, like for example, in the spring and fall and through the winter, sometimes we get these high pressures. These high pressures cause a beautiful blue sky, sunny, gorgeous day, but that bluebird sky is not good for fishing because the barometer is very high and it's very stagnant. It's not moving. So the fish can tend to get lockjaw. So it's beautiful weather and people are like, why aren't we catching fish? It's because of that barometer. Same thing when a low pressure or a hurricane goes through, the barometer drops and it stays low, fishing is not that good. So you want a moving barometer. As far as the tides go, when you're offshore fishing beyond anywhere from 100 foot or more, really anywhere from beyond 60, 70 foot or more, tides don't necessarily have a big part to play. What has a big part to play is the salooners. Now, a salooner for where you're actually fishing is very difficult to find. Short of a smartwatch, which you can't have on our boats, short of a smartwatch or something like a Ross chart or rib charts, something you're going to have to pay a couple $100 for is the best way to find the salooners. And I personally use rib charts. That helps you find the salooners. You can type in your GPS coordinates where you're going to be fishing, and that'll give you the salooner schedule. Rock charts gives you temperature schedules, tide charts, and also salooners for the area you're going to be fishing. And then there's a lot of smart watches that where you're going at, you can pull up your GPS and it will give you the salooners. All a salooner is the major and minor tides. If you're an inshore fisherman and you're not familiar with salooners, you should really, really get familiar with them. I remember as a kid, quick story, sidebar here, as a kid I would fish the dock all the time. I bought my first boat when I was 9 years old, and I made a living catching bait for the party boat guys. People going out in 39 hours, I would catch bait, and that's how I bought my first boat. And I would sit on the dock and I'd fish for pinfish all day, but there was this older gentleman there who was super experienced. He would literally show up at 4 a.m., drink coffee, read the newspaper. He'd sit out front, read the newspaper all day. He'd check his watch, occasionally read the newspaper. Well, that certain time rolled around, he'd roll up his newspaper, grab his fishing rod, walk out to the dock, catch like 10, 40, 50-inch snook, and then mosey back 10 minutes later and go sit and read the newspaper some more. The only time he fished was on that major salooner. That major salooner is a huge part to play in really good fishing. Inshore, it's super easy because they're published in the newspaper, they're published in tide charts, and you pick the area or the pass that you're fishing, and it's right there. You have a major and a minor salooner. Minor salooner is definitely good fishing, but that major salooner is typically an hour to 2 hour time frame in which the fishing is very, very good. Offshore, it's harder to do because it's a very specific spot in the big Gulf of Mexico, and it's not like nearshore where they have a tide buoy at each pass, so offshore it's much more difficult to find. But as far as tides go, to answer your question, tides not so much. As long as the water's moving, you're good. If the water's totally stagnant, like in the summertime when the water's not moving, you have no wind, no seas, fishing kind of sucks. But as long as the water's moving, you're good. But that major and minor salooner does have the same effect offshore. But it's very difficult to find when you're offshore.
So what I do offshore is I'm looking at the moon. I like it when it's straight up in the air, or when I don't see it at all, it's underneath it. When I see the horizon, it seems like it's not
yeah, and that's
major and minor then.
The major and minor, all it is tidal pool. So the sun and the moon pool water on the edges of the earth, and that's what causes our tides as the moon, or as this earth rotates. And the tides have a big part to play because it makes water move. As far as the moon phases go, a full moon is really good fishing. New moon is really good fishing, but it's different times of the day. New moon means there's no moon at night, but it's basically a full moon, but you just can't see it because it's hidden on the other side of the earth from the sun. So a new moon has really good day fishing typically, and okay night bite, better than normal. A full moon has really, really good night bites. Typically the midday from 10 a.m. to like 4 p.m. sucks. But the fish feed 24 hours, so sometimes during a new moon, the bite's really good, or a full moon, the bite's really good during the day. Typically, if it's a full moon, 2 or 3 or 4 days ahead of that full moon, those fish are getting excited. The water's moving, they start feeding really well, and that bite is really good even during the day. But that time, 1 or 2 days before the full moon, till 1 or 2 days after the full moon, the day bite from 9, 10 in the morning till like 4 or 5 in the afternoon sucks. But the night bite is great. The new moon, the opposite is true. A few days before that new moon, the night bite's really good. A few days after the new moon, the night bite's really good. But during the new moon, the night bite's not so good, while the day bite is much better. However, new and full moons cause greater tides. So when you're offshore, the current, like for example at the elbow and 250 foot of water, you could have a 2, 3, 4 knot current. And you could use 2 pounds of weight and not be able to hold bottom. So the new and full moon is kind of a gamble in that effect because you have to battle those currents, but you can use it for great fishing. That answer your question? All right. One last time, guys. We're 20 minutes in here. I want to make sure everybody who showed up got a raffle ticket. If you have not got a raffle ticket, make sure you get them. This will be the last time we pass them out, all right? Oh, sorry, man. All right, anybody else? Any other questions? Howard?
How about fish calendars?
Fish calendars? A lot of them are nice. Yeah, and a lot of fish calendars have them. The problem with the fish calendar is they're specific locations.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is you can buy a fish calendar for John's Pass, and that works great when you're fishing John's Pass, but when you're 50, 60 miles from John's Pass, it's totally different. So fish calendars give you a general idea based on moon phase, but as far as salooners go, and as far as the weather goes, you're on your own there. You have to kind of grasp at straws. Me personally, as a charter boat captain, if I have a client that wants to go fishing, I'm going. Now granted, I'll do my best to communicate and say, hey, today's probably not that good a day to go fishing, or hey, the weather's not that great right now, or hey, because of the moon phase, we're probably going to struggle today, or hey, because of this cold front, we're probably going to have a tough day of fishing. So we do try to communicate there, but as far as a charter captain goes, we're going fishing. If you want to go, we're going fishing, as long as it's safe, of course. But for the most part, we get to experience the good and the bad and the ugly. There's good days and there's bad days. And we wouldn't have been around for 90 plus years with a lot of bad days. We try to have all good days. And we work really hard on the things we can control, like providing excellent service and providing an excellent experience. But as far as fishing goes, we can't make the fish bite. We can put you on top of them, and hopefully they cooperate with us. And that's the goal there. But using tools like that, moon phase, tide, salooner tides, that kind of tools in your toolbox will help you catch more fish.
To help the man that asked that question about the calendar, it's probably best to deal with the, right where it's tides, number 4, fishing on the location, and figure out from there, to give you a general idea.
Yeah.
Not a 100% idea.
Yeah.
So maybe,
yeah, the fishing calendars work really well. I like mine online, and a lot of times before a trip, I'll pull out the rip charts and I'll look at where the currents are, I'll look at where the ocean currents are, and I'll see what's going on out there as far as current goes. And then I'll look at the temperature, see what the temperature is, the sea temperature, the water temperature in the area I'm fishing. And then a lot of times we'll look at what's going on as far as upwellings and the nutrients offshore if we're going trolling. And then we'll look at the moon phase, we'll look at what's going on with the barometer. We'll put all that information in the notebook, and then we'll kind of plan out based on the wind and sea direction where we're going to go that day. And then at the end of the day, we have a nice sheet of paper saying what the moon was doing, what the sun was doing, what the current was doing, what the wind was doing, what the waves were doing, and then we see all the spots we fished and how we did. So over time, you build a really good log or a history of what works well at what time of year. So over time, there's no trick to this, guys. It's just pure grinding, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and learning from your mistakes, and hopefully not repeating those mistakes, right? Any other questions? Quiet out there today, guys.
What's the best bait to bring?
What's best bait to bring? One of my favorite baits to use when I'm offshore fishing is using a sardine or a threadfin plug. And all that is taking one of these dead baits and plugging it out. So I'll show you what that means. Right now we use thread fins because you can get them domestically and they're a lot better quality. But unfortunately the boat was already gone by the time I got down there this morning. So I had to grab some sardines out of the freezer. So I've got sardines here to show you. These sardines are crazy hard to find in big quantities, the big quantities that we need for the boat. And a lot of times they're a lot mushier than I would like. Like right now that belly cavity, it feels like pudding. I just squished it just by 2 fingers, you know. Whereas the thread fins we're getting are a much higher quality bait. So what we do to plug out the thread fin, first step is to cut the tail off. Whether you're using a knife or using scissors, I prefer bait shears when I go fishing. That way they're right here by me and I can go, let's say I run out of bait in my bait bucket, I can go grab a handful of bait and I'm prepared. I can quickly do it right at my fishing spot. So bait shears, great tool. So first step is always cut the tail off. If I was going grouper fishing, this is what I would start with right here. Now if I'm going snapper fishing, I would cut the tail off and then I would cut the head off. That gives me a plug. If this was a thread fin, what you got left with here, thread fins have a larger belly. So it kind of sticks out here. So on a thread fin, what I would do is I trim that belly cavity a little bit and it kind of opens up that belly cavity. On these sardines, you don't necessarily have to do that because they're already kind of skinny. So this is what I call a plug, and all it basically is just meat. And this is what I start with. Typically when you pull up on a fishing spot, it's a great idea to start with dead bait. Most of the time what I'll do, in a perfect situation with experienced anglers, I would have a majority of people use dead bait. Then I might have 1 or 2 people drop down live bait, and I might have 1 person drop down a vertical jig. In a perfect world, that's what's going to happen. The dead bait gets the smell going in the water, and gets those fish waking up. The live bait will take care of that 1 aggressive fish that's ready to chew right off the bat, and that vertical jig is going to pick up any of those other more aggressive fish as well. And a vertical jig is great because you can get that down in the water before we even get set up on the anchor. A lot of times as the captain drops the anchor and we start dropping back on the anchor scope, one of the deckhands can run back there and cast a vertical jig way off the back of the boat. And it gives a chance to kind of cover that area before the boat gets set up. So a vertical jig is definitely the quickest way to get down there and test the waters. But a big live bait will take care of that big aggressive fish who's ready to chew right away. But as far as the best bait to catch a lot of fish and catch quality fish, that sardine plug is the way to go. And then me personally, I would pair that sardine plug with my go-to rig, which would be a double snell rig. And that double snell rig basically allows me to put 2 hooks into that chunk of bait. So now, anywhere that snapper or that grouper bites, he's going to get a hook in his mouth. So all you do with this chunk of bait, I want it to be hydrodynamic so it doesn't spin. There's kind of 3 golden rules to offshore fishing. You want to make sure you hook your bait so it doesn't spin. You want to make sure you hold bottom and present that bait naturally. And then when you get a bite, you want to make sure you crank and don't yank. Very important. Don't be a jerk reel, all right? So I want to make sure this is hydrodynamic. Now, when this goes to the bottom, my weight, I've got my weight on my main line, I've got a swivel, I've got about a 4 to 5 foot leader typically. So this weight is going to be what drags my bait to bottom. So the skinny end of my bait needs to be pointed to the weight because this is how it's going to go down the bottom. The weight will drag it and that bait will come right up along the main line. If your bait's hooked in a way that's not hydrodynamic, it's going to spin, tangle up on your main line, and when you reel it up, you're not going to catch anything. When you reel it up, you're going to have a tangle. When you have tangles, when you reel up your bait, that's because you did something wrong. And the quickest way to fix that is making sure that you're hooking your bait naturally and making sure it doesn't spin. So the skinny end of this bait, I'm going to want pointed at the weight of that hook. or the weight of this rig. So how I do this, the bottom hook or the first hook or the hook furthest from the swivel, I start with that hook and I put it right at that silver and blue line. And what I do is I just kind of move the scales out of the way, and then I put that hook in perpendicular to that silver and blue line. That silver and blue line is the backbone of the fish. So I put the hook in perpendicular to the backbone, and I pull the hook out the other side of the bait. Now I'm going to turn that hook parallel to that silver and blue line or the backbone. The second hook I'm going to put in about a quarter of an inch back from the eyelet of that first hook. Same idea, perpendicular to the backbone, all the way through to the other side, then I turn it parallel. Now I've got this perfectly straight, beautiful piece of bait that even I kind of want to eat right now. And the idea behind this is it's going to go to the bottom very naturally. It's going to go to the bottom without spinning around my main line. And when this gets to the bottom, it doesn't matter what part of the bait that this snapper or grouper bites, he's going to have one of those super sharp hooks in his mouth. So as far as the best bait, in my opinion, this is what I fish with 98% of the time. The only other things that I might fish with, let's say I was on a 10-hour all-day trip and I was fishing a little closer to shore in the summertime, I really like the squid strips. The squid strip is a great bait. What this does is this mimics an octopus tentacle. Octopus is the #1 bait for red grouper. In the summertime, we'll drift large areas of hard Swiss cheese bottom and hard rock bottom for red grouper. And this squid strip is going to produce tons of fish. The idea behind this is you get 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 people on the boat drifting with this squid strip. So that red grouper looking up out of his hole, it looks like a big old school of octopus. So with this squid strip, what I personally do is I'll still use that double snell rig, but instead of 2 smaller hooks, what I'll do on that double snell rig is I'll put a big old like 7 or 8-aught hook at the bottom. That's the hook, that's the first hook, the hook furthest from the swivel. And then I'll put a second hook up above that 7-aught hook that's typically around 4-aught. So I've got a 7-aught first hook and about a 4-aught circle hook above it. The reason behind that is I've got a big hook for the big grouper in the middle of this bait. So what I would do is I'd start that big hook right in the middle and I'd put that smaller hook up towards the top of this bait. So that way when the grouper sucks this up, he's got that big hook in his mouth. And when a little snapper comes up and pecks at the top of this thing, I'll be able to catch him too because of that smaller hook. So that's what I would use a lot of times if I'm not using that sardine. But typically that sardine or thread fin plug with the double snell rig is what I would fish with the majority of the time. Unless I'm drifting for red grouper, then that squid strip is what I would use. Besides that, that single hook with a big live bait for the gag grouper is a great option too. But as far as the best bait goes, that double snell sardine or thread fin plug. Now if I'm fishing inside a 40 foot of water, the best bait, in my opinion, is live shrimp, followed by fiddler crabs. Because inside a 40 foot of water, I'm not going to have a fish that's going to be big enough to come up and swallow this thing in one bite. Most of those fish inside a 40 foot are a little bit smaller. I might use this if I was going after a grouper inside a 40 foot, but most of the time inside a 30, 40 foot of water, the live shrimp is my best bait, or my recommended bait, or what I would use if I was fishing. The reason behind that is a live shrimp, everything out there bites a live shrimp. From a mackerel to a kingfish to a yellowfin or yellowtail to a hogfish to a porgy to a sea bass, everything bites a live shrimp. But the problem with it is as soon as you get a little nibble, that live shrimp is gone. So on our half-day fishing trips, the best bait that we use and what we give to our guests is just cutting that strip. Nobody tell Bass Pro I'm spilling squid juice, alright? The best bait is just a little piece of that squid wing. The idea behind this is like beef jerky. It's very hard for that fish to pull this off the hook And if you're going out there with your kids or someone who hasn't fished before, you cut up some strips of that squid wing, put them in a cup and fish 30, 40, 50 foot of water, they're gonna have a blast. You're gonna catch a big old stringer of those yummy grunts or gray snapper, porgies, sea bass, other stuff like that, and it's a great time. So it depends on your depth of water, but to answer your question, my favorite bait is that sardine or threadfin plug with that double snell rig. And that double snell rig, if I'm fishing inshore at the Skyway from Mangrove Snapper, I'm fishing 250 foot of water, I'm using that double snell rig. If I'm fishing near shore for red grouper, double snell rig. The double snell rig I can show you after, but basically it's a snell knot with a single hook, and then you just put a second hook on there and snell that too. On our again on our website, hubbardsmarina.com, you can click fishing trips, and you have the fishing tips and tricks page. There's a video there where I show you how to do the double snell rig. It's a very, very simple knot, and it's very, very quick. It's easy to learn how to do. So the double snell rig is a great option for a multitude of different fishing techniques and approaches.
Carry sardines on 5-hour trips at all?
No, not typically. On our half-day fishing trips, we don't typically carry those sardines because what I mentioned previously, inside of 40 foot of water, that squid strip or that squid cube or that shrimp is the best bait going. On that half-day fishing trip, it's typically about 30 to 50 foot of water, so we don't offer the thread fins or sardines on that trip for that reason, just because if you're using a whole sardine or a whole thread fin on the half-day, this time of year, you have a good shot at a gag grouper, but you just don't get a lot of them because it's not super deep. The 10-hour trip and longer is where we start having those thread fins on the hook. Any other questions?
A couple of questions on the bait placement, whether it's on the bottom or we noticed on the American red snapper fishing this year, a lot of the fish were suspended.
Yeah.
We're using that kind of a rig at the bottom.
Yeah.
Crank it about halfway up over there. But as far as the rest of the species of fish, they let the sinker on the bottom.
Yes, sir. That's a good question. So his question was, as far as the placement of the bait, do you fish on the bottom, above the bottom, etc.? Me personally, almost all the fishing I do is right on the bottom. You want to keep that bait directly on the bottom, so still. You want to make sure that you're keeping your line tight enough to feel the bait, but not tight enough to disturb the bait on the bottom. And what he mentioned was this past year during the red snapper season, they caught a lot of red snapper up off the bottom, meaning they drop down, hit the bottom, and then reel up. And that's true. Red snapper are very aggressive, very stupid, very, very common fish that are very aggressive, and they'll eat just about anything. Whether it's a sardine, or a thread fin, or a bonita strip, or a mackerel strip, or dead bait, live bait, whatever. Red snapper are really, in my opinion, I don't even like fishing for them just because it's really easy to catch them. Nowadays, it's just getting easier and easier and easier as they become more and more prolific. As long as you're in deep enough water, they're going to eat pretty much anything from a vertical jig to anything else you put in the water. So red snapper are pretty easy. When it comes to mangrove snapper are very smart, very leader shy, not so aggressive fish most of the time. So in my opinion, my favorite snapper species to go out there and target is that mangrove snapper. You can go out, if you can go out there and catch mangrove snapper consistently, trip after trip in large numbers, you are a very good angler. And that's what's, in my opinion, sets a good angler away from an expert angler. Someone who can go out there and catch mangrove snapper after mangrove snapper after trip after trip, that's a really good angler. So the way that we catch mangrove snapper, I already showed you the rig. That double snell rig is going to help you catch much more mangrove snapper, much more consistently, using that plugged bait with that double snell rig. The second part of catching mangrove snapper, let me finish this question, I'll get to you. The second part of catching mangrove snapper is using the right hook. You can double snell rig all you want, but if you're not using the right hook, you're not going to have a shot. Typically what I like is that thin wire hook. Bass Pro Shops, it's called an octopus up high. They have a bunch of them back there on the shelf. Owner hooks are a really good brand as well. Basically, you want something with a thin wire. The idea behind that is the thinner the wire, the easier it is to poke that through the fish's mouth. Similar to like when you go to the doctor and get a shot. They use that big old needle, you're going to feel that. Where if they use a super small needle, it's super easy to stick that into the patient without them crying, you know. I cry. Another story. All right, so also thin barbs. You could tell, you could hardly see the barb on this hook. The larger the barb, the harder it is to stick that into the fish's mouth. The idea behind the barb is once the fish is hooked, that barb keeps the fish hooked. So if you can have no barb on your hook and still catch plenty of fish, but you have to keep pressure on the fish. So me, myself, when I'm fishing for mangrove snapper, I'm using thin wire hooks with a very small barb. Now that means I have to constantly keep pressure on that fish because mangrove snapper are very smart. When they get hooked, you'll catch a mangrove, he's fighting like crazy, you're reeling, and then once you get him up off the bottom, once he loses sight of bottom, they're a very smart fish. They'll actually swim up towards the boat. And so often, I can tell when I have a mangrove hooked, because you're reeling, he's fighting, and all of a sudden it stops. The line goes slack. That's because he's hauling ass to the surface with his mouth open, shaking his head. And if you stop to be like, I think I lost it, you did lose it, he'll spit your hook. They're very smart fish. You have to keep the pressure on that fish and keep cranking and keep that rod tip bent. If you slow down or if you stop, he's going to be able to spit that hook because you gave him slack. So thin wire hooks, thin bar is a great option for the mangroves. Then you use that double snell rig with the plug. Me personally, I like using a smaller weight. If I'm only fishing maybe up to 100 foot of water, typically I'm using 3 to 4 ounce weights. If I'm fishing 100 foot of water or more, typically like a 6 ounce weight. But I'm trying to use lighter weight. The reason is it looks a little bit more natural having that lighter weight down there. As far as the rod goes, I like a very light rod. A light rod with a good tip. You can see the tip's pretty sensitive on this thing. It's bouncing up and down with just a little bit of movement. Also, can you hold the tip of that rod? Hold it real hard. Also, a good backbone. So I've got a sensitive tip, but I've got a good backbone in case I hope you gag grouper when I'm out there mangrove snapper fishing. So I've got my sardine plug hooked up. I'm ready to drop the bottom. So as I drop the bottom, I'm going to know I hit the bottom because the line's going to stop going out. Put the reel into gear. What I do is I'll get ready. As soon as I put it in gear, I'll reel up the slack and I'll get ready. And then I'll wait 60 seconds or a minute. If I haven't got a bite after the first minute, what I'll do is a lot of times I'll lift my rod tip to the sky real slowly and then I'll drop it back down to bottom. The reason behind that is very important. Again, drop the bottom. Once it stops going out, I've hit the bottom, I reel up the slack and I sit there. 60 seconds or so, I don't get a bite, I'll lift that rod tip up to the sky and drop it back down. The reason behind that is simply when I drop the bottom, a lot of times this hook and this weight are going to fall pretty close together. And that's not natural. It doesn't look natural. The fish don't like it. Whereas if I let it drop the bottom and sit like this for a minute, a lot of times some stupid fish or some aggressive fish is going to come up and nail that bait. If he doesn't in the first 60 seconds, by lifting your rod tip real slowly to the sky, it basically keeps your weight up off the bottom. And then the current is going to pull your bait away, and you lower your rod tip slowly back down to the bottom. Your weight and your leader is going to be nice and stretched out. That bait's going to be super far from your hook, and it's going to look super natural. So that's the idea behind hitting bottom, reel up the slack, wait a second. If you don't get a bite, rod tip to the sky real slowly, drop it back down to the bottom. Now, once you've done that, guys, it's all on you. If you're sitting there drinking a beer, talking to your buddy, making fun of the guy in the front, you're not going to catch anything. You got to pay attention. Me, myself, what I do, I've been doing it this whole time, just out of muscle memory here. is I keep my thumb and forefinger on the line. I keep my other hand on the reel. That way when I feel that bite, I'm able to start cranking right away. No matter what type of rod I have, even my new Bull Bay rods that we have in the shop that are so sensitive I can feel a pinfish part, I still keep my thumb and forefinger on the line. The reason behind that is it gives you more sensitivity. So when you feel that bite, you can start cranking. Once you start cranking, if he's too big, I can switch gears. I really like this 2-speed reel for that reason. It enables me to have 2 reels in my hand at one time. A 2-speed reel for Mangrove Snapper, if you're not going to go for a 2-speed reel, you want a higher gear ratio reel. Because the higher the gear ratio, the faster the reel, but the lower the power. Similar to your vehicles. If you're in 6th gear, you've got a lot of top-end speed, but you don't have a lot of torque. Whereas if you're in 1st gear in your vehicle, you've got a lot of torque, but not a lot of high speed. Same thing on the reel. Low gear gives me a ton of torque, a ton of power, but not a lot of speed. So let me show you the difference here real quick. Now, right now, you see where my lead is? See where that lead is? See where my handle is? We're going to turn this handle one time. See how much higher that lead got? That wasn't even a full revolution. So we're going to drop that back down and try it again. So this is high speed or high gear ratio. See where my lead is? That's 1 revolution. Now we're going to drop it back down again. Now I'm going to, with the press of a button, put it into low gear. See where my lead is? 1 revolution. Didn't move very much, did it? That's the difference between high speed and low speed. A high gear ratio is going to retrieve more line more quickly, but you're going to have lower power. A high or a low gear ratio, you're going to retrieve less line, less quickly, but you're going to have more power. Basically, with the 2-speed reel, it's like having this big old 6-aught and this small high-speed jigging reel in one. And with the press of a button, I can go from this reel to this reel. It's pretty cool. So those 2-speed reels are very, very, very helpful when you're mangrove snapper fishing, because you need that high gear ratio to set that hook. But how many times have you been out there mangrove snapper fishing using that plugged bait that works so well, and you catch a bigger grouper or a bigger fish and you can't reel him up off the bottom? He takes you into the rock and breaks you off, right? With the 2-speed reel, you press a button, you downshift it into 1st gear, and with the quick drag adjustment, now you have a lot more drag. So these 2-speed reels work very well. The best 2-speed reel, in my opinion, is this Daiwa Saltiga. It's got 40 pounds of drag, so it's got as much drag as this big old 9-aught nasty heavy reel does, with less than half the weight, and a lot more power and a lot more smooth feel. Now, also the Shimano Talica is a great reel. They make accurate reels. It's a bunch of 2-speeds. Those are pretty high-end reels, though. We're talking $450, $500. There's lower-end, more affordable 2-speed reels too. The Daiwa Saltist. This reel's about $350 to $400. This is the same as the Saltiga, same brand. It's just got a little less drag ratio. It's not as quite as fancy because it's not all one-piece forged reel. I used to know all this, but it's not all one piece. The Saltiga's got 35 pounds of drag. And this reel's only $360 retail. You get 10% off when you book a trip with us. So the Daiwa Saltist is kind of the next level down. Now, if you're really trying to get a good deal on a 2-speed reel, the 10 Fathom, the LD50 is only like $250. Pretty affordable for a 2-speed reel. So it's kind of up to you guys. In my view, I started with the Daiwa Saltist, and someone talked me into the Saltiga, and now I love it. And it's really almost the only reel I use, because with 40 pounds of drag, I can catch a big red grouper on it, or a decent sized gag grouper on it, and I can catch a hogfish on it too, and anything in between. So it's really the only reel I use. So it's kind of It's a lot of money, but when you look at it in the fact that it's going to replace a lot of your other tackle, that's how I justified it to my wife. Any other questions?
Yeah, you almost answered my question. Targeting the Mangrove Snapper, did you actually reduce the size of the hook? You said you used thinner wire, but would you move from a 7/0 to something smaller?
Yes, sir, for sure. Mangrove Snapper, as far as the size hook, I typically, if I'm fishing up to about 60 foot of water, a 4 to 5/0 hook. If I'm fishing beyond 60, 70 foot of water, typically like a 5 to 6/0 hook. And it depends on the time of year. For example, right now, with gag grouper open, I'm going to be using a 6/0, maybe even a 7/0 hook with 50 or 60 pound fluorocarbon leader. In the spring, when gag grouper are closed, in the summer, when the fish are a little bit more leader shy, I'll be using more like a 5/0 hook when I'm out deeper and a 4/0 hook when I'm in shallower, with maybe even 30 or 40 pound fluorocarbon. Because I don't need that extra line and that extra power for those gags. So I kind of gauge my tackle to where I'm fishing, but generally a happy rule of thumb for Mangrove Snapper is 40 pounds has 5/0 hook. And then you can drop down your size leader if you're not getting them. You can bump up your size hook if you're missing a fish. But typically that 5/0 is a good starting spot.
What would be a good medium contest for being able to jump from a snapper to a grouper from that spot?
Good question, good question. On my salt tiga here that I use, or the salt disc, if I had the salt disc with 35 pounds of drag, this one I've got loaded with 50 pound braid and 50 pound salt top shot. Whereas my salt tiga I've got loaded with 60 pound braid and 60 pound leader, and I've also got one loaded with 80 pound braid and 80 pound top shot. So that gives me a good range. I can grab one with 50, I can grab one with 60, I can grab one with 80. And I've got a range in between. And then I keep my big nasty 9/0 loaded with 125 pound and 125 pound leader, and I can put a 200 pound leader on this. So I've got a good range of tackle. And then I've got my spinning rod with 20 pound braid and a 30 pound fluorocarbon top shot and a super light egg sinker knocker rig setup for hogfish, and put this out for a kingfish or maybe a wahoo offshore. So that's kind of my range. Good question. You gotta have the right tool for the job, for sure. And as an angler who's gonna fish 1, 2, 3 times a year, who maybe doesn't live here, you wanna try to get one rod that does a little bit of everything, and that makes perfect sense. And for me, you gotta invest and do that 2-speed rod, 2-speed reel, because then you got a little bit of everything. We just had that new line of Old Bay rods. I have the perfect rod that you can catch hogfish on, you can catch a big gag on too. But you spend a little bit more money, you have one rod that does everything very well. Or you could go here in Bass Pro Shops, they have the Seafire line, literally for like 120 bucks, you get an offshore rod and reel combo. That's rod and reel. Now granted, that's not gonna help you catch the hogfish or the super quick bite mangroves. It's not gonna handle a big amberjack, but do a little bit of everything okay. And that's kind of the budget there. You gotta find what works for you. If you're a more advanced angler, you're gonna spend a lot of time out in the water, you wanna buy one rod for one species. For myself, I've got a Mangrove Snapper rod, I've got a hogfish rod, I've got a gag grouper rod, I've got an amberjack rod, and then I've got a flatlining rod. And maybe I'll bring 2 more just to be safe. You know? So it just kind of depends. For hogfish, the fluorocarbon size that I prefer to start now is 30 pound fluorocarbon. Anything more than that, you don't get the bites as much, in my opinion. Anything less than that, you lose them a lot. But I start out with 30, and if the bite's really hot, I might even switch up to 40. I'll start out with 30, and if I'm not getting bit, I might drop down to 20. But typically, 30 pound fluorocarbon leader with a 4/0 hook is my favorite starting spot for hogfish. If I'm on a private boat with just a few buddies who know what they're doing, I'll be using super crazy light lead, like an 1/8 ounce, or maybe even a split shot, or maybe no weight at all. because the slower that bait goes to the bottom, the more natural it appears, the greater the chance of catching that hogfish. If I'm on a party boat with 20 other people who might not be as experienced, I might be using a heavier lead, maybe half ounce, 3/4 ounce, maybe even 1 ounce, depending on the current, because I want to try to stay more up and down and stay out of everybody else's way. So the general rule of thumb that I'm trying to convey here is you want to use the lightest lead possible for your situation. The lightest lead, because hogfish, a lot of people call them hog-nosed snapper. They're not a snapper, they're actually a wrasse. They're a very, very different fish. Hogfish, naturally, if this is the bottom, hogfish are going to be cruising up off the bottom. So they stay above the bottom and they look down at the bottom looking for those crustaceans. They feed on the bottom, but they often will hit that bait as it goes to the bottom. So if you're using a super light lead, a lot of times you'll catch that fish before your bait ever gets to the bottom. So you have to be really paying attention. And it makes it difficult, because if you're using a 16th ounce lead or an 8th ounce lead, a super light lead, it's very hard to feel that bite, very difficult. So if the waves are bouncing or if there's any current at all, you got to step up the size lead. A 1 ounce egg sinker, knocker rig style, it's going to rock it to bottom. It's going to be super easy to feel that bite, but it's less natural looking. So you have to find that happy medium. The biggest trick for hogfish is fishing down everything else. When you're fishing out there, guys, a lot of times you'll get anchored up on a spot and all of a sudden you start catching fish, everybody's catching fish, having a great time. Then you get to that point where it's like, all right, the bite kind of slowed down. Then you get to that point where it's like, all right, there's no bite at all. You get to that point where it's like, all right, dude, when are we gonna move? That's when you want to start fishing for hogfish. Once everything else stops feeding, that's when you want to start switching to shrimp and targeting those hogfish. Those hogfish bite best where nothing else is feeding. That gives you an opportunity to present your bait to those hogs. So you have to be very patient. If I'm on a boat with 2 or 3 other guys, that might take an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to that point. So what a lot of times we'll do is we'll cheat. We'll use something like the super shrimps from Aquatic Nutrition to feed those other fish and help slow that bite down more quickly. Chum is a great way to cheat. Also, just throwing out some shrimp. A lot of times when we're on a charter with 2 or 3 other people, we'll anchor up and we'll throw out handfuls of cut shrimp. I'll take a little bait bucket and I'll put some fresh shrimp in there and I'll just kind of turn it to its side so they're all just like I'm chopping celery. And I'm just in there with the scissors cutting those shrimp up until you get super small little pieces of shrimp. And I'll take handfuls of that and throw it up high. And then I'll throw some of this super shrimps out there, and basically you've got this huge smell of shrimp going in the water. Those more aggressive grunts or gray snapper, the porgies, the sea bass, they're eating all that chum, getting full, and you'll be able to drop down and get right after those hogfish. The thing about hogfish is once you catch one, it's like someone turned the light switch on. And you'll catch 5 or 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 more. And then all of a sudden someone's going to walk over and hit the light switch, and then they shut down. And you got to go to another spot and start that whole process over again. So they take a lot of shrimp, they take a lot of patience, and they take a lot of practice. But you can't get very good at it very easily. I'm not.
You can keep the heads and the tails of the sardines when you're making chunks. And when we get ready for the next spot, throw those over. Like with a slick little chum, and help get the fish up toward the boat. You have to catch fish to the boat.
Yeah. The tails, the heads, when you're cutting those plugs, and on the thread fins, the bellies that you're trimming off, we always save that stuff, put it in cups. It works really well for kingfish chum. Get those kingfish or tuna coming up to the boat.
So this time of year with everything coming inshore, the bigger fish coming inshore, like a 5-hour trip?
Yeah.
You guys, the gear that you guys have is kind of heavier gear. What would you recommend as a pole to bring to put the most meat in the pool?
On a 5-hour half-day fishing trip, what's the best pole to bring? In my opinion, if I'm going out on a half-day fishing trip, I'll bring 2 rods. I'll bring my Saltis or my Saltiga in case the bite's going really good. This thing is going to help me catch more fish more quickly because I've got a bigger lead. I can put that double snout rig on there and I can literally catch them 2 at a time. And that's going to help me fill that cooler. But if I want to have fun and I want to feel the bite, or maybe the bite's a little bit slower and I want to use lighter tackle, my spinning rod is going to be my favorite thing to go to because I'm going to have more sensitivity. It's going to be a lighter tackle. I'm going to be able to feel that bite more easily, and it is a great time. Even a gray snapper or a white grunt on a spinning rod with 20-pound test is a ton of fun. It feels like a big fish, and it's a good time. So on a half-day fishing trip, most of the time I'm using that spinning rod. But if I've got a fish fry to go to, I'm going to put a 3 or 4 hook chicken rig down there, and I'll hook one fish, and I'll let it sit there. And a lot of times he's struggling fighting, and you'll hook 2 or 3 more. You can reel them up 3 at a time. So the chicken rig on something like the Saltiga or anything that's a high-speed reel with like 40-pound test is what I would go to if I want to fill a pool.
Is that something you guys would do for us?
Yeah. The mates, you take care of them, they'll take care of you. And a lot of times they'll tie you up in chicken rig, depending on the mate. Some of them don't know how to do it so well, but I'll help you. They do take a little bit of practice. Any other questions? We covered everything. All right, can you stop the video for me? All right, guys. Well, if you don't have any more questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. Now, guys, keep in mind, every Sunday night we do that live show. So if you enjoyed the question and answer, definitely check out that Sunday night show. Every Sunday night, 8:30 p.m.